Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our very first live broadcast of an actual show. Last night I did a simple test broadcast, but tonight we are going to do an actual show. I don't know how long it's going to last, or how we're going to do this, or how it's going to play out, but I thought it would be a very interesting experiment to use the remote broadcasting equipment. Right now, we have no phone lines, we have no broadband internet connection, yet we are streaming direct to you live using the equipment that we have. Now tonight, we're not going to be doing a Surrounded by Idiots show per se. We are in fact doing an episode of This Old Shack, our alternative energy show. We have been doing this show since 2006, believe it or not. So we are well used to talking about alternative energy, its uses, how to use it, and everything else. We live, believe it or not, in a hydraulic empire. Now, what is a hydraulic empire? A hydraulic empire, that term, was first coined by a fellow by the name of Carl Wittfogel. He died in 1988, but he created the term, along with a couple of other people, of something called a hydraulic empire. Now, when most people that know about such things think of a hydraulic empire, they think of an empire that exists mostly in Asia, in China, Mongolia, that sort of place, because they needed strict control over their water in order to be able to produce the rice that they needed for the population. So they had to have controls over the water. Now, there are other hydraulic empires. There's a hydraulic empire, I believe, that was in southern Africa. I'm reading from my notes here. It's called Practical Orientalism, and it's in a modern society, neoliberal economic setting like what we have. The concepts of common ownership and equal and universal access rights often emerge as exotic or oriental. However, they have to use things like military power in order to back that up. Now, here's the interesting thing. You and I, and everybody you know, everywhere that's connected in any way, shape, or form with modern society is in fact living in a hydraulic empire. You and I live in a hydraulic empire. It is an empire that essentially sucks you dry. It's the empire where you take one step forward and they push you back one step to keep you in your place. That said, can you guess what the hydraulic empire is that we live in? No, it's not an empire of water like the lake that you see behind me. That's Big Bass Lake, by the way, located on the 45th parallel here in northern Michigan. This hydraulic empire that we live in is based entirely on our lives and everything to do with our lives. This empire started around the beginning of the 20th century, maybe in the late 18th century, and it goes on today. It is extremely powerful, and it will be in existence probably for hundreds of years. Now, let's take a look at some of the aspects of this hydraulic empire. This empire, incidentally, for those of you that haven't guessed, is in fact the empire of oil. The hydraulic empire that we live in is the empire of oil. I know a lot of you are going to say to yourselves, "Oh, Bill, you don't have to live with oil. Oh, come on, you can just live off the land." Really? The tools that you use to till the soil, how do you think they were made? You think they were made in a blacksmith shop by hand? I doubt it. At some point, the hydraulic empire of oil is going to come into play. This plastic bottle right here. Without oil, it wouldn't be produced. Without oil, it wouldn't get transported. This notebook that I have right here. Without oil, it wouldn't have been produced. It wouldn't have been transported. This hat, same thing. This fan, this can of beer, this wrench, all of it. Everything that you and I experience, everything that you and I do, our entertainment, our lives, our electricity, all the neat electronic toys that we use, the camera that you're watching, the very internet that you're watching this over, all rely on the hydraulic empire of oil. Now, you're thinking to yourself, "Bill, you know what? I'm just going to go out, I'm going to get off of that hydraulic empire." Not so fast, bucko. There was an article in the New York Times recently about a vehicle that I would actually buy, believe it or not. A lot of people would scratch their heads over that comment when they find out that I'm talking about the Chevrolet Bolt. That's right, Chevy's electric car. It goes 45 miles on the batteries, and then a gasoline engine takes over if you're going farther than 45 miles. It is I think it's a neat concept, and I would buy one if it cost $20,000 less than it does now. Because this vehicle is so expensive, the New York Times did a study at $5 per gallon oil, I believe, gasoline, how long it would take before you actually were, in fact, saving real money. 25 years is how long it would take you driving a Chevy Bolt, $5 a gallon gasoline, before you started actually saving money. Now, a lot of people will do things like put solar panels on their house. I'm going to put solar panels on the roof of my house, and I am not going to pay another electric bill because I am going to be selling electricity to the electric company. Well, that's going to cost you around $25,000. Guess how long it takes to pay that back before you start making money? Around 25 years. A heat pump. You know, I'm going to save money on my gas and electricity by having a heat pump. Well, you'd have your heat pump installed, and guess how long it takes you before you start seeing any real savings? That's right, 20 to 25 years. Are you seeing a pattern here? This pattern is all due to the hydraulic empire. Because if you're not buying gasoline, if you're not using oil, well, you're kind of going around the empire, and the empire doesn't like that. Now, that said, I want to say that we use alternative energy right here. What you're watching right now, this entire setup, is all due to alternative energy. That's how it's powered, so it can be done. On a small scale, if you try to stay independent and completely off the grid, like we do here at the Shack, you in fact can do it. It's not that hard. Let me show you. I'm kind of winging it on this episode. Normally a episode of This Old Shack takes, I don't know, about a month to get all the scripts and various bits of information together. And then another few weeks of editing and whatnot, and doing it on the fly, as I'm doing it right now without a script, is a little bit unusual for us, to say the least. So let's take a look at what we have here. This is, right here, you get the camera on it, right there. Those, ladies and gentlemen, those are our solar panels. Just some of them. I didn't bring all of them with me. It's kind of hard for me to see the monitor and do the show at the same time. There we go. Let's see here. Yep, that's a pretty good shot. Let me do some adjustments to the camera here and see if we can get the lighting situation on that a little bit better, provided the software cooperates with us. There we go. That's better. Now you can see the solar panels. Now these solar panels that you see here, these, of course, are all due to our friend, the hydraulic empire, because they're made with glass and metal. The ore for the metal was transported using oil products. The glass was created using oil products. So these solar panels, even though they are off the grid, are all due to the hydraulic empire. Now these are glass. These are amorphous silicone as opposed to crystalline silicone. These are essentially sheets of glass with a layer of electric producing material on it that produces electricity when it's exposed to light, specifically sunlight. They aren't real efficient, but they are efficient enough for the average user. Each one of these, 1, 2, 3 panels, these put out 15 watts each, or about 1 amp each, maybe 1.5 amps. The backs of them, as you can see here, have a little wiring harness on them. I don't know if you can see that right there. Yep, a little wiring harness that I put together to hook them up. Now, when you use these, a lot of people think to themselves, you know what, I'm just going to get some solar panels, hook them up to the house, and off I go. Au contraire. In an off-grid situation, the sun is not shining all the time. If you have wind turbines, the wind is not blowing all of the time. So you're going to need a secondary electrical source. The electrical source that most people think of is the grid, which of course is all due to the hydraulic empire. And since this is essentially an exercise in staying off the grid and getting off the grid, we put together a system that keeps us off the grid. It's pretty cool. So you have your solar panels, you have your wind turbines and whatnot, and they produce electricity. But once the sun goes down, once the wind stops blowing, you're a caveman living in the dark. So, what do? What you do is you store the electricity that you are creating, the solar panels and your wind turbines and whatnot, in the form of a chemical potential. Let me show you that right now. The electrical potential is stored in what you see right here. These are, in fact, what you see here. Let me check the monitor to make sure that you can actually see what I'm talking about. For some reason, I keep setting up the camera so it's too low. There we go. Right there. Let's see how that looks. That looks better. Make one quick adjustment here. And there we go. See, normally when we do an episode of This Old Track, all of this stuff is edited out in the post-production work. And, well, this particular time, that's not happening because we're doing this live. It's kind of hard to do post-production work when you're doing something live. At any rate, these batteries right here, this is part of our deep cycle battery bank. A battery bank is more than one battery put together. If you have a flashlight and you put 2 or 3 batteries in the flashlight to make it work, that's essentially a small battery bank because you've got more than one battery put together. There's 2 ways to connect a battery bank. In parallel or in series. Now, a series set of batteries usually uses, and I say usually because in most home circumstances, uses 6-volt batteries. And to achieve the normal 12-volt operation that most low power applications use, you have to take those two batteries and you have to connect them in series. In other words, the positive to the negative and the negative to the positive. That adds the voltages. In a parallel setup, like the setup that we have here, you're connecting the batteries in parallel together so that you keep the voltage and you're adding the amount of capacity. As I said, these batteries are, in fact, deep cycle wet cell batteries. And I don't care what anybody says about AGM batteries, dry cell batteries, or anything else. For my money, having a wet cell battery is the way to go, because you can do maintenance on them, you can refill them, they will last longer. These batteries right here went into service in 2006 and they still work perfectly fine. Each one of these batteries has a amp hour reserve. In other words, drawing 1 amp is how they get your amp hour reserve, is 210 amp hours. So essentially we have 600 amp hours worth of usability in these, in theory. You never want to use more than 50% of your amp hour potential, so essentially these are 300 amp hour. This is a 300 amp hour battery bank. So that's the battery bank itself. Now, as you can see, right now, it is early evening and the sun isn't shining. So, here in the off-grid situation that we find ourselves in, here at the shack, we have had to make a small sacrifice to the empire of oil. And what we do is, when the sun isn't shining and we need to charge the battery bank, and there's nothing wrong with doing this in an off-grid situation. Plenty of people, plenty of places, companies, organizations, small communities and whatnot do this. We use a gasoline-powered generator. You can get a diesel-powered generator, a propane-powered generator, a natural gas-powered generator. Doesn't matter, but you need that supplemental source of power. You could even use the alternator on your vehicle, let your vehicle idle to provide energy. There's many ways to do it. Unfortunately, you're still stuck in the hydraulic empire of oil. Now, before we end the show, let's take a look at our broadcast setup, because I promised John DiNardo I'd take you guys through it and show you exactly how we do this. As you can see, we're in the middle of nowhere right here. We have our lake, Big Bass Lake behind us, right back there. What we are doing, let's bring the camera over here. We have, in fact, a laptop computer right here. This is a compact 2 gigahertz processor, 1 gigabyte of RAM laptop, and you can see the broadcast software right here, and you can see our connection to the internet that you're watching the show from right here. Let's see if I can get the camera a little bit closer. Right there. Okay. So that right here is in fact a broadcast studio in a laptop computer. Believe it or not. Now, to power this, what we have over here is we have another, I don't know if you can see it over there, there's another deep cycle battery sitting right there in the yard that powers the power supply for this laptop. That power supply also supplies power to this right here. This is a small antenna right here. This is You probably may have seen these before. We have our cell phone hooked up to it. And right here, on here, this little antenna right here, it broadcasts a cellular signal. Right here is a USB broadband modem. This uses the cell tower signals to pick up and send the broadband signal that we're using to do the show right now. So it goes from the camera that you're watching into the laptop right there, gets processed by the video processor, goes over to the software that connects to the USB modem, which is attached to this cellular antenna that you see right here. And that cellular antenna, and this is where it's going to get tricky because I can't zoom with this camera, so you're going to have to bear with me. And that is connected to this pole right here that goes up and up and up. And right there, that little blue box that you see sitting there is a 5-watt cellular amplifier. Now, this amplifier runs off of 12 volts. It can be used inside of a vehicle, or it can be run off of a 12-volt power supply. There we go. You can see that a little bit better. So there you are, right there. That right up there, that's the amplifier. And this mast continues up another 30 feet, way up there, just like that. And way up there, you can see, right about there, it's hard to see in this shot, because we can't zoom the camera, that is a Wilson Electronics cellular antenna. It's designed to be used in a vehicle. It's designed specifically for over-the-road truckers so that they can get a cell phone signal no matter where they go. It looks rather like a CD radio antenna, but it has its own ground or ground plane, and it picks up the signal to the cellular system. And right now, we are approximately 25 miles away from the nearest cell tower. But we have, in fact, a full signal. I don't know if you can actually see it here. Probably not. But we, in fact, have a full signal right there. I should probably go ahead and readjust the camera so that you can see what I'm talking about here. And all of this is not that hard to put together. Just about anybody can do it. Essentially, all you're doing is installing some software and hooking up the camera, and you start talking. The hardest part is finding a decent provider that can provide you with a place to stream the video from. You can use Justin, you can use Livestream, just about anything. And right here, you see the 5 bars of signal. So, that is how we are broadcasting tonight, which is pretty cool when you think about it. Essentially, what you can do is you can do a live broadcast from virtually anywhere that you can get a cell phone signal. No matter where you are, what you're doing, where you go, you can get a cell phone signal. You can be broadcasting live like I am right now. Oh, that's about it for tonight. I am going to conclude this broadcast. That was our explanation of the hydraulic empire that we live in, and how no matter what you do, they're always working to make sure that you stay in your place in the hydraulic empire of oil. And I will close with this. There are people out there that are creating alternative sources of energy. Essentially your free energy, if you will, using things like hydrogen generators, using things like magnetic drives to create energy. In every single case, these people are attacked, they're warned, they're killed, they are convinced not to continue fighting the empire of oil, the hydraulic empire that we live in. As a matter of fact, I will conclude with this. I keep thinking of things to talk about, so I'm going to conclude with this. Our vehicle right here. This is this old sack truck. It is a 2000 Dodge pickup truck with a 4.7 liter V8 engine, designed, I believe, by Daimler, Mercedes-Benz, for Chrysler. This vehicle is very interesting because there was a gentleman about, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago now that created a way using a power supply, using a deep cycle battery, a pressure tank, some water, and stainless steel to create a hydrogen generator. Now this hydrogen generator, and I've got the video around somewhere when we get back to our main headquarters, our broadcast facilities, if you will. I will get that up on the screen. He took the deep cycle battery, hooked it up to the power supply. The power supply was hooked up to the hydrogen generators, the canisters, if you will. And he was able to create a prodigious amount of hydrogen gas. That hydrogen gas is pressurized in the pressure tank. And from there, it would go into the engine, the 4.7 liter engine in his Dodge pickup truck. He did not buy gasoline for almost 9 months. He was driving this thing around with an empty gas tank. It's right there on the video. He was building up approximately 20 to 25 pounds of pressure, and the thing would work just fine. When the truck got underway and the engine started, he would run the generating system off of the alternator on the vehicle. Now, he was putting the plans out for free. Anybody could build one of these things. I've built hydrogen generators myself. We had some installed on this truck a couple of years ago, and they worked pretty good, but I couldn't produce the amount of hydrogen that I needed to really make it worthwhile. He was going to release these plans for free. You could build one of these systems. You would reduce the amount of emissions to almost nothing. Basically, you would have water coming out of your exhaust pipe because you're running off of hydrogen. The byproduct is water. And sadly, he was convinced not to do this for his own personal safety, you see. Plus, you wouldn't want something happening to your family or your friends, would you? No, you wouldn't want that to happen. So, he apparently has abandoned his efforts to get out from underneath the empire of oil. And that's how that works. So, that's about it for this episode of This Old Sack, which sounded, in this particular case, an awful lot like an episode of Surrounded by Idiots, but it wasn't. So, tomorrow night, we're going to do another broadcast. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I'm sure that I will be able to come up with something pithy, funny, unusual, and entertaining, as always. So, until tomorrow night, which will be Sunday, Easter Sunday, we're going to do a broadcast, a very special broadcast, because it is, in fact, the day that we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So, until then, until I see you guys again, God bless you. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful evening.